Hi, I'm Ollie. Welcome to Possibility Space. Today I'm going to read you England's profoundly racist cross-party consensus. England has always been a racist country. We often do a good job of hiding this, in our national curriculum, for example. Every now and then, though, an issue comes along that exposes our double standards. Our treatment of Ukrainian and, comparatively, Palestinian refugees is one such issue. Yesterday, Kemi Badenoch, leader of the opposition, said,
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative government established the Ukraine Family Scheme, and in total, over 200,000 Ukrainians, mostly women, children and the elderly, have found sanctuary in the UK from Putin's war. However, a family of 6 from Gaza have applied to live in Britain using this scheme, and a judge has now ruled in their favour. This is not what the scheme was designed to do. This decision is completely wrong. It cannot be allowed to stand. Is the government planning to appeal on any points of law? And if so, which ones?
Badenoch is wrong on the details here. The case wasn't allowed under the Ukrainian scheme, but on human rights grounds. That's not the point, though. The point is that her position is explicitly racist. It's ugly stuff. No need to worry, though. Our Prime Minister, former human rights lawyer Sir Keir Starmer, is on his feet approaching the dispatch box. Starmer has a strong track record on this issue. He once said, "Labour has been scared of making the positive case for immigration, and we need to turn that around." Let's see what he has to say.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. I do not agree with the decision. She's right. It's the wrong decision. She hasn't quite done her homework because the decision in question was taken under the last government, according to the legal framework of the last government. But, Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. It should be Parliament that makes the rules on immigration. It should be the government that makes the policy. That is the principle, and the Home Secretary is already looking at the legal loophole which we need to close in this particular case.
Are we sure this is the same guy? He accepts Badenoch's misrepresentation of the case and adopts her pernicious narrative, placing people in a racialized hierarchy. The loophole he wants to close seems to be that they wrongly classified Palestinians as human beings? Why is a so-called human rights lawyer attacking the judiciary and the dignity of refugees? It's a cynical electoral tactic. He's making villains of some of the most vulnerable people on earth in a doomed attempt to boost his dismal approval rating of -25. The newspapers call this taking the fight to reform. It's unclear to me how marching towards your enemy, chanting, "We agree with you," constitutes fighting at all. Labour's plan is to copy the xenophobic and Islamophobic politics of Nigel Farage. They're denying citizenship and safe passage to refugees from predominantly brown-skinned countries while offering a welcome to whites. It should go without saying that this is a recipe for moral degradation and defeat. When I heard the Prime Minister say that Ukrainians deserve sanctuary, but Palestinians do not, I felt the urge to write to my MP, Chris Curtis. But then I remembered what he said last time I wrote to him. I complained that the UK was sending weapons and military gear to Israel, and he replied, quote, "Because the UK also provides similar exports to other countries, particularly Ukraine against the Russian invasion, the advice the government received was that any F-35 parts which were not going directly to Israel should not be suspended, as this was deemed to have the potential to disrupt the international supply chain and the global F-35 fleet, which would have serious implications for international peace and security, and weaken the ability of other nations we provide exports to, such as Ukraine, to defend themselves." You can disregard the detail about parts going directly to Israel. That's just a supply chain quirk. Curtis uses it to hide a simple fact. British components are exported to Israel, albeit indirectly. Israel uses them to commit war crimes in Palestine. The British government had to admit this in court recently after failing to cover it up. Curtis' argument is that Palestinians must die so that Ukrainians must live. It is a grotesque proposition that would lead any half-decent MP to ask questions like, can we support Ukraine's defense without supplying Israel's genocide? We know our components might be used for war crimes. Can we exclude Israel from the supply chain? Shouldn't we follow the UK's legal rules? Arms sales must end if there's a, quote, clear risk that weapons could be used to violate international law. The British government has asked none of these questions. It also issued a D-notice urging the press not to ask them. D-notices are not legally enforceable, but the British press are a pretty pliant crowd, so they're quite effective. The press often support the government's clear racism instead of challenging it. Dan Hodges is a national newspaper journalist. Last week, he advocated war crimes against Palestinian children. This week, he praised Starmer's response to Badenoch. Quote, Starmer gave a clear and direct answer on the Gaza family. It was embarrassing to watch. The far right now leads in the polls. If these politicians face any punishment, it will be, perversely, for failing to convince voters that they are racist enough. I don't see eye to eye with Hodges on many topics, but I do agree with his final point. We should all feel deeply embarrassed. Thank you for listening. Possibility Space is a reader-supported publication. You can subscribe for free on the Substack app, on your podcast app, or you can even become a paid subscriber on Substack. Thank you for listening. I hope you found that insightful. See you next time.